I woke up to the faint smell of bleach. It wasn't unusual. The scent had lingered in the house for years. My late husband, Robert, used to joke that bleach was the perfume of a clean home. But that morning, the smell felt sharper, heavier, like something had been scrubbed too hard for too long. I sat up slowly, my bones protesting in their usual way. The Nevada light crept through the blinds, a golden haze painting the dust that floated above the dresser. Sunday morning. Church bells in the distance. Another quiet day for a woman who had seen too much noise in her life. At 71, I'd accepted solitude as a kind of roommate. My daughter, Emma, lived 2 states away in Oregon. My son, Richard, called once a month, mostly to make sure I hadn't fallen. I didn't blame them. They had families, jobs, lives. Still, the silence in my kitchen could swallow a person whole. That's probably why I decided to fix the leak myself. It started last week, a slow drip from the basement pipe that grew into a persistent tapping. I'd wrapped it with duct tape, the kind I used for everything, but the sound kept returning. So I called the plumber. His name was Carlos Mendoza, mid-40s, sun-browned skin, calm eyes, a voice like warm wood. He reminded me of Robert in his younger days, steady, quiet, patient. When I opened the door, he smiled in a way that made the morning feel less hollow. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, setting down his toolbox. "You mentioned a leak." "Yes," I answered, leading him downstairs. "Basement, near the water heater. It's been giving me trouble." The basement was my least favorite place in the house, always a bit damp, smelling faintly of mold and old memories. I rarely went down there anymore. Robert's tools still hung neatly on the wall, untouched, since he passed 7 years ago. Carlos crouched near the pipe, running his fingers along the damp metal. "Simple fix," he murmured, but he paused. "You been noticing any odd smells down here? Maybe gas or chemicals?" I frowned. "No, just cleaning products, I suppose. My son comes by sometimes to help." Carlos's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe concern. He nodded slowly and went back to work. For the next hour, I made tea, listening to the faint clinks of his wrench below. I hadn't realized how long it had been since another voice filled the house. The sound of someone working, breathing, living. When he came back up, he had that look people get when they've found something they shouldn't. "Mrs. Hayes," he said softly, "mind if I ask, has anyone been using your basement lately?" I blinked. "Not that I know of." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because there's a padlock on one of the old storage doors, and the air, it smells off, like paint thinner, and something else." A chill traced the back of my neck. That door had been open for years. "That's strange," I said, forcing a smile. "It's probably just old supplies." But when he left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, after the sun fell and the desert went still, I took a flashlight and went downstairs. The lock was there, new, heavy, silver against the dust. And the smell Carlos mentioned. It wasn't bleach this time. It was sharp, metallic, like fear. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I leaned closer to the door. Dust hung in the air like suspended time, tiny motes drifting in the beam of weak yellow light. I hadn't been down here alone in years, not since Robert's heart gave out on that same cement floor. The padlock was indeed new, its silver body shining like a warning. I tugged at it, expecting it to be fake, but it held firm. The door behind it, thick, wooden, old as the house, hadn't been locked since we moved in back in 1982. My heart started to hammer. I went upstairs, fetched the spare keys my son had given me years ago. "Just in case, Mom," he'd said. The key ring had a dozen random ones, most of which I hadn't used in decades. My hands shook as I tried one after another, the metal clicking uselessly. Finally, the fourth one slid in. The padlock clicked open with a sound that felt too loud for the quiet basement. Behind the door was darkness, heavier than before, thick, alive. I clicked the flashlight back on and stepped inside. It was a small storage room, about 10 feet by 10, but what I saw inside froze me to the bone. Boxes. Not just any boxes, new cardboard boxes, stacked neatly in rows. On top of them, a folded tarp. On the wall, a single shelf with empty mason jars, and in the center of the room, a plastic container with what looked like dried concrete inside. I walked closer, my knees stiff. There was something buried under that dried mixture, something shaped like a cylinder, metallic. My fingers brushed against the top of it, and when I pulled, the thing loosened slightly. A tin canister, old, rusted, heavy. There was writing on the side. I wiped the dust away. Safeguard, do not open. The kind of label that makes you want to open it immediately, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I noticed something else, a faint sound, like a slow, deliberate drip. It came from the far corner where the pipe ran along the wall. I turned toward it, the beam of light following, and then I saw it, a trail of dark liquid glistening faintly, not water, thicker, redder. I dropped the flashlight. When I picked it up again, my hands were shaking worse than ever. I forced myself to breathe, to think rationally. It's paint, I whispered to myself, just old paint. But I knew it wasn't. I stumbled upstairs, locking the basement door behind me this time. My heart raced as I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone. I wanted to call Richard. I wanted to ask him what he'd been doing down there, but something in me hesitated. He'd been distant lately, too polite, too rehearsed in every phone call, and every time he visited, he'd insist on going down to check the water heater. That was always Robert's excuse, too, back when he wanted to be alone with his secrets. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I woke at every noise, the groan of the pipes, the creak of the old house settling. But around 3 a.m., I heard something different. A car engine. Headlights flashed briefly through the curtains. I peeked through the window just in time to see a black SUV pulling into the driveway. My heart skipped a beat. Richard stepped out. He wasn't supposed to visit until next month. I didn't turn on any lights. I just watched. He went straight to the back of the house, carrying something under his arm, a duffel bag. Then, the basement door creaked open. My stomach turned to ice. I waited 5 minutes, then 10, before I finally slipped on my robe and went downstairs. I moved quietly, years of motherly stealth, and reached the basement door. It was slightly ajar, light spilling from the crack. Inside, Richard was kneeling beside the boxes. His phone flashlight glowed against the wall. "Richard," I said softly. He jumped so violently that he hit his head on a pipe. "Jesus, Mom, you scared me." "What are you doing?" "Fixing the damn leak. What do you think?" He laughed nervously. "You shouldn't be down here. It's not safe." "That's not what Carlos said." He froze. "Who?" "The plumber," I said. "He was here this morning. He found this." I pointed to the canister. "What's inside?" "Richard." He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, please. It's complicated." I felt my throat tighten. "Then uncomplicate it." He sighed, shoulders sagging. "You don't want to know." That's when I realized I already did. He said I didn't want to know, but grief had already taught me the price of not knowing. "Richard," I said, keeping my voice level, "put the bag down." He obeyed, a boy again for a split second, then straightened, jaw set. The beam of his phone cut a hard angle across the stacked boxes, freezing labels in white. I caught words like filters, solvent, adhesive. Not illegal words, but the kind people hide anyway. "I'm not hurting you," he said. "I'm trying to fix a financial mess before it swallows us. You're on a big lot, Mom. The market's cooling. If we sell now, you downsize. Everything gets easier. Mark knows buyers. He knows how to—" "Forge my name?" I asked. "Open my cabinets? Teach my daughter to medicate me?" He winced. The floor hummed with the furnace like an organ note. "That wasn't the plan," he muttered. "The plan was a clean transfer. Then I'd make it right." There it was. the sentence that gives cons their oxygen. I'd make it right. I pointed to the canister sunk in the hardened mix. What is this? He shook his head. Not mine. Mark what? Richard stared at the floor, a man spotting his reflection in a spill. Mark said you were fragile, that you'd panic and call the police before we could explain. He told Emma to help you sleep. Just for a while. Just so we could... Mom, I swear to God I didn't know about the vents. My anger came out cold. You didn't need to know how the house would be stolen to benefit from the theft. We stood in the buzz of fluorescent light and the whisper of a house that had listened to every secret we ever told it. Then I did the practical thing fear sometimes prevents. I took photos. The canister, the tubing, the timer Carlos had unplugged, my son's bag, my son's face. Leave, I said. Right now, out the back door. Do not come here again without my attorney present. He looked at me like I had turned into a stranger. Maybe I had, or maybe, for the first time, he was seeing his mother as the homeowner, the signer, the person whose consent wasn't a formality but the entire point. He left. I locked the door behind him with hands that didn't feel like mine. Upstairs, I dialed Linda Park and then Carlos. Words came out of me like files. Timestamp, items, positions, the make of the duffel bag, the patch on Richard's jacket. Carlos told me to breathe and said he was driving over. Linda said, "We escalate, quietly and correctly." When Carlos arrived, he checked every latch like a man who understood that safety is half hardware, half ritual. We watched the camera system together. At 2:13 a.m. the previous night, Mark had slipped in. At 3:29 a.m., he'd left. Tonight's footage showed Richard at 3:03 a.m., in and out within 12 minutes. Clean hands. Dirty idea. By mid-morning, Linda had frozen my deed and bank instruments, filed a fraud alert with the recorder's office, and scheduled a meeting at her firm. Me, Emma, and Richard, no Mark. She told me to keep every bottle, label or not, in a sealed bag. She told me to eat. I obeyed one of those instructions. The conference room was too bright. Emma arrived first, fidgeting with the strap of a canvas tote. She looked younger than her age. Guilt has a way of scrubbing a face back to its most frightened version. Richard came in late, shoulders square like he could block a moving truck with posture alone. Linda slid 4 photos across the table, then the forged deed. "You can help this become smaller," she said, "or you can help it grow teeth." Richard spoke first. Numbers spilled. Loan, interest, equipment, cash flow gap. The story made engineering sense and moral nonsense. Emma followed with a smaller, sharper confession. Mark's gentle voice, the organic drops, the lie that sleep equals safety. I didn't perform outrage. I asked for the bottles. She handed over 3, 2 with labels, 1 blank, all only half used. "I thought I was helping," she whispered. Linda sealed them in evidence bags and logged them with the time. "From here," Linda said, "we do this by the book. No surprises, no more night visits. You will not enter your mother's home without me present. You will not touch her mail, bank cards, or cabinets. You will not bring anyone named Mark within a mile of her front door." Richard nodded. Emma stared at the table as if it might forgive her if she held still long enough. On the way out, Richard followed me to the lot. "Mom, I can fix—" "No," I said. "You can own. You can own that you chose a shortcut through my life. Fixing begins after owning." That night, I slept above the coffee shop again, the grinder sounding like small thunder beneath me. I dreamed of my basement door swinging open and closed with the seasons, each hinge a year, each year a choice. When I woke, Carlos had texted a single sentence. Footage at 5:41. Mark returned to the kitchen. He attached the clip. I watched Mark climb my stepstool like he'd paid for it, pocket 2 bottles like they were his, and leave like the house had thanked him. I felt the precise clarity of rage sharpened to purpose. Purpose is the cleanest air I know. Police secured the property that afternoon. An officer with patient eyes showed me residue swabbed from the cabinet above the stove, explained the lab chain, logged my statement with the steady cadence of a metronome. On the porch, Linda reviewed next steps and, almost as an afterthought, squeezed my shoulder once. It felt like someone handing me a tool instead of a platitude. I went to bed with copies of everything: photos, filings, timestamps, printed and paper-clipped in a blue folder. I put the folder under my pillow like a fairy tale child hiding a tooth and slept for the first time without dreaming of locks. Courthouse mornings carry a special kind of quiet, the sound of souls making room for paperwork. I wore the navy blazer Robert bought me for our last anniversary dinner, the one with an honest hem and pockets deep enough for a pen and courage. The judge read the docket, language sterile by design: forgery, fraudulent instrument, attempted endangerment, temporary protective order. Mark sat at the defense table, wearing a suit that fit his shoulders the way bad decisions fit his record, barely. His lawyer smiled a shade too brightly. The prosecutor didn't speechify. He cued the basement video, tubes, timer. The face the camera had kindly captured when vanity pulled the phone too close. No one coughed. No one moved. Even the air seemed to bow. Lab results were next. Volatile organics consistent with controlled evaporation. Barbiturate traces in the sleep vitamins. The clinical diction made it worse somehow. Evil in passive voice. The defense tried a family dispute story. The judge listened without blinking. Then he signed the restraining order so quickly the ink still looked wet when the clerk lifted it. He referred the charges to the DA. No cuffs, no theater, just the quiet inevitability of a system doing its slow job. My children were not charged. They were witnesses. I was grateful for that and sick from it in equal parts. Love is the only disease I know that can be both antidote and toxin depending on the dose. Afterward, in the hallway that smelled like old varnish and paper, Emma approached with a grace I didn't teach her and a steadiness I hoped I had. "I'm here," she said. 3 syllables, all true. Richard promised repairs, money, afternoons. Whatever penance he could swing. I told him to start with showing up when I hadn't asked. He nodded like a man discovering humility has weight. When I unlocked my front door that evening, the house inhaled. That's the only way I can describe it. Rooms remember. They know who means them harm and who means them home. Carlos went room to room, changing filters, resealing seams, labeling panels like a teacher who believes in makeup assignments. When he finished, we stood in the living room with coffee and paper cups, staring at the sky through the window the way children stare at aquariums. "You did the hard part," he said. "What's that?" "You didn't let someone else tell your story back to you until you forgot it was yours." The next days were logistics and little victories. The recorder's office flagged my parcel for additional ID. The bank placed a teller-only hold on the CD. Linda rewrote my will to make shortcuts boring and expensive. I bought a new lock. I taught my door the sound of my key again. One morning, a letter arrived from the DA's office outlining charges against Mark, language that looked clinical until you imagined the nouns in a kitchen. I folded it back into the envelope and slid it behind the blue folder. Some documents you keep within reach not because you need to reread them, but because your hands remember the weight of winning your own life back. 2 months later, we weren't healed, but we were building something sturdier than apology. Emma started showing up on Sundays with the same awkward affection she had as a teenager. A brave casserole, a plant she couldn't name, a joke that took the long way home. She set a little cactus on my sill and watered it like she was practicing belief in small, tough things. We created a rule: 1 minute of silence before any heavy sentence. We called it the clean air rule. It made our words kinder and our pauses smarter. Richard found steady work 2 states over. He texted photos of projects, stairs, porches, a ramp he built for a veteran with 1 leg. He sent me a picture of a storm sky over a cul-de-sac with the caption, "Looks like your old book covers." We avoided money talk. We got good at weather. Carlos kept appearing with coffee and community news. He never turned our story into gossip. He turned it into a reason. One afternoon, he handed me a flyer. Senior Home Safety Volunteers. "You'd be excellent," he said. "You notice the little wrongs before they grow into big ones." The first house I visited belonged to a widow named Ruth, who stored batteries in the freezer because her brother told her to in 1989. We tested alarms, replaced a frayed cord, and labeled her breaker box. Before I left, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You made the air feel lighter." I told her the secret. Respect the small fixes. They're how we stay. I began driving back roads I hadn't touched since Robert was alive. Route 50, where the valley yawns, the frontage roads where you can count jackrabbits at dusk, the long glitter of I-80 curling toward possibility. My car learned the weight of ladders and locking pliers. My hands learned the language of clips and cartridges and screws that don't quite fit until you ask them nicely. Some evenings, when the sky did its slow blush from brass to violet, I sat on the porch and told my husband about the day, not as a ghost or a prayer, just as a habit of gratitude. I told him about the volunteer coordinator who spoke like a former sergeant, about Emma's casserole that inexplicably contained pineapple, about Richard's text that said simply, "Called the bank first, thought you'd want to know." I told him that the house breathes fine now. I told him I do, too. I don't pretend endurance is glamorous. It is not. It is changing filters before they choke, updating documents before vultures smell weakness, asking one friend for help before the wrong man offers it for a fee. It is having coffee with a plumber who became a person in your life and realizing you don't owe the past your fear. One morning, standing at the sink, I caught my reflection and thought, I am not the woman whose story was rewritten without her. I am the librarian who filed the truth where I could find it again. When the DA's office sent a notice that Mark had taken a plea, fraud, forgery, a bar on home improvement services, probation with a chemical safety course, the paper felt both too light and exactly right. Justice rarely thunders. It checks a box, stamps a line, and frees your hours. I celebrated by buying a new porch chair. I sat in it until the stars convinced me to go to bed. If you're listening because your house feels strange, or because your children seem to be speaking someone else's sentences, here are the rules I keep taped inside my blue folder. 1. Trust the air. If it smells wrong, it is. 2. Document before you confront. Photos calm courts. 3. Make fraud boring. Locks, holds, notarized forms, teller windows. Build frictions that honest people accept and liars hate. 4. Write your will while you're laughing, not crying. You'll be kinder and sharper. 5. Adopt a tradesperson. Find a Carlos. Pay them well. Ask them questions. Learn 3 tool names so you can talk like you live there. 6. Practice the clean air rule. 1 minute of quiet before the hard words. Breathe first. Speak second. People keep asking if I forgave my kids. Forgiveness is not a magic trick. It's a road with mile markers. Some days we reach the next sign. Some days we pull over, eat something sweet, and try again tomorrow. That's a kind of love older than guilt. As for me, I make coffee, check the vents, and water a cactus that refuses to apologize for surviving. The house and I understand each other now. We won't keep secrets that can suffocate us. If you need permission to start over, consider this your signed letter. Open a window. Choose one small fix. Let the room remember its owner. Then sit and stay. You survived. Now live.